This is a game in the Object 430, one of the Tier 10 Russian medium tanks on Westfield. And we've done Westfield a bunch of times, so we'll talk a little bit about Westfield. The 430 is a tank that they just buffed recently. It now has one of the better DPMs in the game, but the gun control is somewhat lacking. It's slightly longer aim time, more dispersion than the other Russian mediums. It all just about balances out in the end. They all end up being, about the same, more or less. So as this is Westfield, we will take control of this center area here. It's very important. Try to see what we can see there and see if we can get some damage out through that area as well. One of the important things on Westfield, because puppies tend to play Westfield pretty poorly, is that you always have to look at where your team is going and what they're doing. So as usual, we're going to have at least one K6 camper. Unfortunately, he's in a tier 10, but that's fine, because they probably will have at least one as well. You just don't want an overwhelming majority of your team in a bad spot. And we have 3 tank destroyers who have not really moved forward yet, but we'll have to see. So they have at least 110 up on the hill, Leo 1. So we know that at least 3 of their 10s are headed over towards this 0 line. That's good news for us. That's good news for our guys on the northwest. Would have been nice if we didn't have to YOLO scout, but them's the breaks. Everybody's still pretty far behind us. The T-95 is moving forward on the northwest. It'll take them a little bit of time to get in a position, but the E3 and the Tortoise aren't really in a position where they can shoot anything. So the IS-7 is more or less by himself up there. I've got some backup behind me, but they're not going to be really useful for spotting. They're just going to be useful potentially if that Leo comes back up here. And that T-30 and that G3 position is also pretty useless until at least in the mid-game. And so right now it's still about being patient. We don't know where a lot of their tanks are. We know that they're mounts in the E100 on the northwest, but we don't know where a lot of their intermediate tanks are. Unfortunately, our E3 and our Tortoise are still pretty far back, so they're not in any place where they can really be of use to any of those guys over there. And in the meantime, their Leo 1 managed to sneak by me, and so he's lit for the T-62A right now, but the T-62A has problems damaging the Leo 1. So the T-62A ends up running away a little bit, which is not good. So we're kind of collapsing on this east side. They have an E-75 up here who can potentially push, and if he pushes, that's going to be troubling. Once he starts getting over this center ridge here, there's not a whole lot of room for me to back up. So I'm going to take slightly higher ground. That way I can cover both this top area here, which is really weak now that our IS-7 is down. The E3 is too far back. The Tortoise is too far back to actually spot or damage anything. So right about now we're down about 7,000 health, and something that you're sort of worried about. Luckily we take that Leo out. It's just a matter of time before they push through this south area here. There's also some holes on the north. Like I'm the one that lit that E100. The E3 is too far back to actually light any of these guys. They're being a little bit passive on this north side here. One of those guys, either the Tortoise or the E3, did light that T-95. So we're still down about 7,000 health or so. Just trying to get any shots of opportunity that I can at this point.
It's a trap!
And I get lit here, probably from the WZ-120. So I have to drop down to the drop spot. Our T-62A is playing pretty low on this hill over here, so he can't really spot that far on that side either. So I have to be careful because I can get shot from the zero line. But you can't back off too far off of the center area here, otherwise that T-62A gets screwed. And their waffle comes charging in.
It's a trap! It's a trap!
And we're still down a bit. Luckily this WZ-120 and the E-75 did not push in at the same time. They're still playing a little bit further back. Again, it's still important to play this center area here if you can, up until it becomes completely untenable. The T-57 is moving along the zero line, but again, because they pushed in sort of a discoordinated fashion, that made it easier for us. That shot was way too far ahead of him. And then the 62A keeps backing off instead of, you know, playing a bush and spotting the T-57 coming in so that the people on the center can shoot him. He's just playing too far back. But I mean, that's been his MO in the entire game, so that is fine. We still have our tank destroyers in E1 playing too far back. They can't even spot guys immediately over that hill in that first trench. So we're fine to hold the position where we're at least for the moment.
It's a trap!
And again, a lot of this is just about keeping those guys in the middle honest, and of course going over a slight little dip I track myself. That E-75 is pushing forward a little bit now. See, if that E-75 had pushed forward a little bit earlier when I was in a further forward position, that would have been a much more difficult game for us. So it's going to be difficult for me to push back up into that G5 area with the T-57 on overwatch from that line and with the WZ-120 and the E-75 in the center. We don't have any eyes on this northwest anyways, so I might as well try to go up there. The WZ-120 has pushed forward, so I can push up through this middle here and either get shots on the WZ-120 and or spot the T-30 or the T-95. So that's what we're going to look to do here. And the T-95 is up first, so we should be able to track them there. And their 1390 is up over on the K line over here now. He moved up to where basically our T-62A was hiding. And then, so I'm just going to play the back side of this hill.
It's a trap.
Again, that was way too far ahead of that guy for the distance that he was. And that was a track, but track is fine in this particular scenario, especially considering that we could potentially protect some of our artillery. The 57 Heavy is shooting me from over on the K line, so that I move back a little bit more so that the ridge to my left is protecting me from direct fire. They're pushing 3 tanks around here. Still to my advantage, I'm relatively artillery safe here. Just trying to get as much damage as I can here before they get too close, because the more guys that you can get down into low damage, the less likely they will feel, the less happy they will feel about pushing you. But the T-30 is my biggest consideration here. I'm hoping that our artillery just takes one shot at the T-30. And of course he does not. He shoots the E-75, who's not threatening to push me. But they all turn towards him because he gets lit, because he doesn't even make an attempt to double push, which he should have, and he really could have from that distance. T-57's coming in along the backside, but it's more important for me to get out this T-30. This T-30 can take me down to a health level that's probably not going to prevent these guys from just pushing in on me, but we were able to take all of them out, which is a good sign. This mouse is pushing over into the Taurus's position in E1. Taurus still has full health. Mouse has 966 health. So my decision is to go along to the backside flank of the mouse. And of course, going over a slight hill tracks me. And unfortunately, our tortoise does not live long enough for me to get all the way to the flank. In retrospect, I was thinking that maybe I could have gone back up here right away and tried to help save the tortoise, but I don't think I would have saved the tortoise anyways. But it shouldn't be a problem to get to the backside of the mouse, particularly when you're in a Russian medium against a mouse. As long as you get relatively close to him, you're pretty safe. You don't want to be in a long distance duel against him, particularly when he has artillery and you don't.
It's a trap!
And so we're able to take the mouse out, which is good. Try not to get myself tracked this time. Okay, and then now here's where I make a sort of critical mistake. So there's 3 artillery left. There's 3 minutes in the game, so my decision is to go back up through this side to clear out this north. So there, the thinking is that 1 or more of the artillery may be along this A line over here, the west side of the A line, and 1 or 2 might be in the base. So my decision is to go back through this north side to clear this out, and then just shoot at the artillery in the base, given that if I went the other way, in the time it took me to kill the probably 2+ artillery that are down here, this guy on the north can potentially run away and I wouldn't have enough time to find him. So that's what I end up doing, is I end up going north here and then east to the base. What I should have done is come up along through here, back through this G5 position, and then run this ridge over here through this F5, E6, D6 area, right? And that would have allowed me to spot both sides. It would have allowed me to secure this middle area here and also make sure that there wasn't anybody moving through here. But mistakes are made. At the time, it seemed like a fairly reasonable plan of action. One of the things that you always want to do whenever you're, the last tank left, is you have to think about all of the possible ways that you can lose, and make sure that you try to cover as many of those as possible. I don't like draws. I'd rather lose than draw, so I'm always going to attack. And so we pick up the GWE running away, and as we do, they have somebody that gets on the cap, which is not necessarily problematic. It's only 1 guy, so that's something that we can deal with. And then I see that there's 2 guys on the cap. So what happened is that they sent both of their artillery down, probably through either somewhere on the southeast side, and got on the cap. And now I'm not going to be able to get back in cap in time. So I really needed to think about that when I was leaving to go through this northwest track, about how I was going to deal with that. And for that reason, it would have been better for me to take through that middle route. But that's a mistake that I made, and so it cost me the game, and it's something that I have to think about a little bit more coherently next time. And so even though we lost, we did pretty well. I mean, we gave our team a chance to at least win. The team was they weren't bad skill-wise, but they were bad positionally. You have a tier 10 over here, you have a tier 10 over here, you have tank destroyers camping in this back line over here. It's not very good positions to be in, particularly when the other team has a lot of artillery. You don't really have anybody in any of the forward positions of any significance, and that sort of creates a problem, and that's sort of reflected when you look at the stats. And so when you look at the stats, this was a somewhat odd game because it's one of those games, one of those rare games where you actually see the combination of Top Gun, Confederate, and patrol duty. It's not something that you see very often because your team has to be pretty bad. So we ended up doing a lot of damage because we did 6.6k damage, mostly because we played in the middle area where we were able to shoot in every direction, more or less. We also did 6.2k spotting damage, and that was a lot of that when we were playing high in that middle area. Was where that came from, along with the tracking of the T-95s and whatnot. But that's something that you don't really see very often, particularly in a solo pub match. But still, even though we did a pretty good job of giving our team a chance to win, it was also our decision to go northwest instead of through the middle that cost us the game. And so that's something that I think gets lost a lot when people look or think about the game that they just lost or something like that. A lot of people will look at this game and go, oh well, my team failed me and whatnot. You really need to be able to look at it as, okay, well, what could I have done? And in this case, it's somewhat crystallized because those the later mistakes are more glaring. That the decision to go to the northwest instead of through the middle is a lot more glaring now than it was then. And again, part of it's luck. If they had put one artillery on cap, I would have been able to win. If they hadn't pushed cap, and they did it in a sort of a haphazard fashion, that's something that I could have easily countered if I was on the other side, but I didn't. And that's on me. And it's one of those things where you can't get so caught up in the fact that you did well, and that you don't see what your mistakes are. Otherwise, next time you're going to end up making the same mistakes. But on the same token, I think you also need to acknowledge what your mistakes were and then just move on and go on to the next game, and don't carry that into the next game. Anyhow, I hope that demonstrates a little bit about the 430 and the sort of hazards of making bad decisions, and the reason why you really need to think about all the different possibilities when it gets to that late game. And thanks for watching.